My name is Kevin Ryan, and I'm here to talk about the official conspiracy theory of September 11th, in particular Part 2 of that theory, the NIST World Trade Center report. I think it's important to go through the detail. This will be a lecture that's very detailed and unfortunately a little bit dry sometimes, but I think it's really important to expose the falsehoods directly, point by point, that have been given to us. As an introduction, I am, again, Kevin Ryan. I'm a former manager at Underwriters Laboratories. I was actually the top manager at UL's water testing division. So I'm not an engineer, I'm a chemist. But I got involved with this because of communications made to me both verbally and in writing about UL's involvement in testing the materials related to the World Trade Center buildings. And NIST is a government agency. They report through the Department of Commerce to Carlos Gutierrez, who's a member of the Bush administration. And their director is also a presidential appointee. So that means that this report actually is a product of the Bush administration. And it's what some people would call Bush science. If you don't know what NIST is, it's the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Let's talk about Bush science a little bit. Been a lot of criticism. It's not Bush League science. It's actually worse than that. It's Bush science. So, in an open letter from 60 prominent scientists, including 20 Nobel laureates, they said the Bush administration had been deliberately and systematically distorting scientific fact in the service of policy goals. The Union of Concerned Scientists said that they found a serious pattern of undermining science by the Bush administration. And finally, the House Committee on Government Reform said they found numerous instances where the administration had manipulated the scientific process and distorted or suppressed scientific findings. So keep that in mind as we go forward. Also, a few things to keep in mind. We're going to start with a little bit of history before we get to the NIST report, and we're going to talk about the preliminary reports that came before that. But a few things really we need to keep in mind is no tall buildings have ever collapsed from fire, but on 9/11 we're told there were 3. And what David Ray Griffin has called a reverse truth, no building exhibiting all the characteristics of controlled demolition has ever not been a controlled demolition. Additionally, 99.7% of the steel evidence was destroyed despite outraged cries from the public and fire experts. And finally, more than a year passed before a full investigation. The NIST was the first full investigation done. There's an elephant in the room, by the way, if you don't know, and it's not Stephen Jones. Demo remembers some things that we don't oftentimes remember, and that is there were a number of experts, these are just 2 out of quite a few, that pointed out that the collapse of these buildings looked very much like a controlled demolition, including Mike Taylor of the National Association of Demolition Contractors, and an interesting person, Ronald Hamburger, who ended up being a contributor to both the FEMA and NIST reports. He said it appeared to him that charges had been placed in the building. A very important thing to remember is none of the official investigations ever really examined the demolition hypothesis. I don't think any of them ever thought to even consider the demolition hypothesis. So a little bit of history. There was some early support for the official story from so-called experts who said that jet fuel fires had melted the steel. Recently, it's said that those crazy conspiracy theorists are always talked about the jet fuel fires melting the steel. That's somewhat true in the fact that the official conspiracy theory was supported by these people. The BBC, Scientific American, Nova Video, a couple of professors from major universities all told us that the jet fuel fires melted the steel. Some other major media sources talked about temperatures which were very high, and as far as I know, none of these people have apologized to us. But just to get this out of the way, steel melts at approximately 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll stick with the unit Fahrenheit throughout this lecture. And jet fuel fires burn in the maximum of approximately 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit unless in a special combustion chamber. And even at that, just a few hundred degrees higher than that. It's important to remember that gas temperatures are not steel temperatures. Steel temperatures in a fire actually lag behind in time and in magnitude of the temperature from gas temperatures. And thermodynamic calculations, which by the way, as far as I know, none of the official investigations ever did, but I've done and other people have done, show that the steel temperatures in the impact zones could have reached a maximum of 600 degrees Fahrenheit. So where are the real experts? There really are no experts because these are unique events. There's a long string of unique events on September 11th. Our nation's air defenses actually don't stand down. Terrorists don't come back to life after stealing our freedoms. And tall buildings do not collapse from fire. That's the history. Because these are unique events, there are no experts to tell us about these things. And there are certainly no experts to tell us why all of these things could have happened on the same day. But there is always an official explanation for terrorism, it turns out. And you may know there are a lot of disturbing questions about the Oklahoma City bombing. Reports about multiple explosions, eyewitness accounts of undetonated bombs in the buildings, FBI confiscating the videos and not releasing them, and experts saying that could not have been done without demolition. But the official story stuck with one guy and one truck bomb, and they found a small group of engineers to support that story with a report. Yeah, let's get to that. There were 4 official investigations, or so-called investigations, into the collapse of the World Trade Center. The first was the American Society of Civil Engineers, which evolved into the FEMA Building Performance Assessment Team. Their report was released in May of 2002, and another very interesting report, which I think people should keep in mind, is the Silverstein-Weidlinger report, which was released in October of 2002, and we'll talk more about that. Finally, the NIST report, which we will go through in painful detail shortly. Okay. Here's an amazing fact that apparently Chris Emery wasn't aware of. The initial American Society of Civil Engineers team sent to the site to tell us what happened at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon matched person for person with the engineering group that gave us the false report about Oklahoma City. Gene Corley, Charles Thornton, Paul Makar, and Mette Sozin were all the 4 engineers who gave us the engineering report about what happened in Oklahoma City. They were also the 4 of the 8 initial people that were sent to the World Trade Center and the Pentagon to tell us what happened there. In any case, the only things these events have in common are terrorism. One's a concrete building, the other's a steel building, one's a bombing, the other's a fire. So, you know, the ASCE says there's 1.5 million engineers in the country. You would think there would be a few more available to tell us what happened on terrorism. Okay? And they started with predetermined conclusions, for sure. Gene Corley knew that once the jets hit the building, that the World Trade Center would collapse as it did. He just didn't know when it was going to happen, he said. Charles Thornton, again from the Oklahoma City report, saying, we all know what caused the collapse very early on. And Shankar Nair, who was an NIST contributor, said that already there is near consensus as to the sequence of events that led to the collapse of the World Trade Center. So these guys apparently knew exactly what happened, and I don't doubt it.